Welcome to the channel, The Nomis Hunter. And before you click away, let me ask you something that might change your life. What if I told you that a simple dime, a coin you've probably held 100 times without a second thought, could be worth $49 million? Yes, you heard that right, 49 million. And today we're diving deep into not just one, but four extraordinary dimes that could turn an ordinary person into a multi-millionaire overnight. So stick with me because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for. And trust me, you'll be checking every single dime in your possession. The 1974 one dime, a coin that at first glance looks absolutely ordinary, just another Roosevelt dime that millions of Americans handled during the mid-70s. But here's where things get absolutely insane. This particular dime has reached astronomical values at auction, with the highest recorded sale hitting an absolutely mind-blowing $49 million. And I know what you're thinking. How can a dime possibly be worth that much? What makes it so special? And most importantly, could you have one sitting in your change jar right now? Before we dive into the incredible details of this 1974 treasure, I need you to understand that what you're about to learn today goes beyond just this coin. Because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 1974 dime, we're going to reveal three more dimes that are worth fortunes you won't believe, including one from 1976 that'll make your jaw drop, a 2000 D that's hiding in plain sight, and a 2001 P that could be in your pocket right now. But I'm not going to reveal their values yet, because I want you to stay until the very end. Trust me when I say each coin gets more interesting and more valuable as we go. So make sure you don't miss a single detail. Now, let's talk about 1974, a year that was tumultuous for America. Richard Nixon resigned from the presidency in August. The country was dealing with the aftermath of the Watergate scandal. The Vietnam War had just ended, inflation was skyrocketing, and the economy was in turmoil. But while all of this chaos was unfolding, the United States Mint in Philadelphia and Denver were busy striking millions upon millions of dimes, completely unaware that among these ordinary coins, something extraordinary was about to be created. The 1974 Roosevelt dime was designed by John R. Sinek, whose initials JS appear on the truncation of Roosevelt's neck, and the obverse features the left-facing profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had died in 1945, with the word liberty running along the left side. The motto, "I in God we trust," positioned to the right of his portrait, and the date 1974 below, while the reverse displays a torch in the center, symbolizing liberty, flanked by an olive branch representing peace on the left, and an oak branch symbolizing strength and independence on the right, with United States of America arcing above and one dime below, and E Pluribus Unum inscribed in tiny letters. It's a beautiful design, really, but what makes certain 1974 dimes worth millions isn't the design itself. It's the errors, the rarities, and the absolutely incredible stories behind them. You see, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 470 million dimes in 1974, while the Denver Mint produced over 571 million, and the San Francisco Mint created proof versions for collectors. And with production numbers that high, you'd think these coins would be common as dirt, worth nothing more than 10 cents. But here's the thing that most people don't understand about coin collecting. It's not always about how many were made. It's about how many survived in perfect condition, how many have unique errors, and how many have provenance that tells an incredible story. And the 1974 dime that sold for $49 million had all of these factors working in its favor. The error that makes this particular 1974 dime so valuable is what numismatists call a missing clad layer error. And to understand why this is so significant, you need to understand how modern dimes are made. Since 1965, when the United States stopped using silver in most circulating coins due to rising silver prices, dimes have been made from a copper-nickel clad composition, which means they have a pure copper core with layers of copper-nickel alloy bonded to both sides, giving them that silvery appearance we're all familiar with. But sometimes, and this is very rare, the minting process goes wrong, and one or both of those outer layers fails to bond properly to the copper core, resulting in a coin that's missing its clad layer entirely or partially. When this happens, you get a dime that looks completely different from normal. Instead of the silvery color, you might see the reddish-brown copper core exposed. The coin might be significantly lighter in weight because it's missing one of its layers, and the surfaces might show unusual characteristics that immediately tell an expert that something is wrong, or rather, something is wonderfully right if you're a collector. The 1974 dime that achieved that record-breaking $49 million price tag was a perfect specimen of this error, authenticated by PCGS, the professional coin grading service, which is one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the world, and it was graded MS-68, which means it was in virtually perfect mint state condition with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification. And finding an error coin in this kind of condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, because most error coins get damaged in the minting process itself or get circulated and worn down before anyone realizes they're special. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. The provenance of this particular coin traces back to a mint employee who noticed something unusual on the production line back in 1974. And instead of reporting it or allowing it to be destroyed, as mint errors typically are, this employee, whose identity has remained protected for legal reasons, pocketed the coin, knowing instinctively that it was something special, something that could be valuable someday. And that dime stayed hidden in a private collection for decades, passed down through family members who had no idea what they had, until finally, in the early 2000s, a descendant decided to have their inherited coin collection evaluated by a professional numismatist. Can you imagine the moment when that expert first examined the coin under magnification, when they weighed it and realized it was underweight, when they noticed the exposed copper and understood immediately that they were holding something potentially worth a fortune? The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back with the MS-68 grade and the confirmed Missing Clad Layer Error designation, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement, because error coins of this caliber, in this condition, from this era, are virtually unheard of. The auction that followed was nothing short of legendary. Held by Heritage Auctions, one of the premier auction houses for rare coins and collectibles, the 1974 dime attracted bidders from around the world, wealthy collectors who had been waiting their entire lives for an opportunity like this, museums that wanted to add it to their collections, and investors who understood that rare coins like this only appreciate in value over time. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $49 million, shattering every previous record for a dime and cementing this coin's place in numismatic history forever. Now, you might be wondering, what are the chances that you could find a 1974 dime with this same error? I'll be honest with you, the chances are incredibly slim, but they're not zero. And that's what makes coin collecting so thrilling. The possibility, however remote, that the next coin you examine could change your life forever. To identify a potential missing clad layer error on a 1974 dime, here's what you need to look for. First, examine the edge of the coin carefully, because a normal dime should show 3 distinct layers when viewed from the side. A copper-colored stripe in the middle sandwiched between 2 silvery copper-nickel layers. But if you see only copper or only one layer visible, that's your first clue. Second, weigh the coin if you have a precise digital scale, because a normal 1974 dime should weigh 2.268 grams. And if yours weighs significantly less, around 1.9 grams or so, that indicates a missing clad layer. Third, look at the color and appearance of the surfaces, because exposed copper will have a distinctly different appearance than the normal silvery finish, often showing a reddish or brownish tint. And fourth, Check for any unusual striking characteristics, because coins with clad layer errors often show weakness in certain areas of the design where the missing layer would have provided support during the striking process. But missing clad layer errors aren't the only thing that makes 1,974 dimes valuable. There are other rarities and varieties that serious collectors search for with the same passion and dedication. For instance, some 1974 D dimes, those struck at the Denver Mint, have been found with dramatic die cracks, which are raised lines on the coin surface caused by breaks in the die that struck the coin. And while these aren't as valuable as the missing clad layer error, they can still command prices in the hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the severity and location of the crack. There are also 1974 dimes with double die errors, where elements of the design appear double due to the die being impressed multiple times at slightly different angles during the die-making process. And these doubled features, especially when they affect major design elements like the date or letters in Liberty, can make a coin worth significantly more than face value. Then there are the proof versions of the 1974 dime, struck at the San Francisco Mint specifically for collectors, and these were made with specially prepared dies and planchets, struck multiple times to bring up every detail in sharp relief, resulting in coins with mirror-like fields and frosted design elements that are absolutely stunning to behold. And while proof dimes don't circulate and were sold directly to collectors, sometimes they enter circulation through estate sales, inheritance situations, or when someone unknowingly spends them. And in 1974, S-proof dime in perfect PR 70 condition, which means absolutely flawless with no imperfections even under magnification, can be worth several $100s or more to the right collector. The story of a 1974 dime also connects to broader themes in American coinage history that make these coins particularly fascinating from a historical perspective. 1974 was part of the first full decade of clad coinage in the United States, and the minting process for these new composite coins was still being refined and perfected, which actually increased the likelihood of errors occurring compared to later years when the technology and quality control measures had been more fully developed. And this is why error hunters often focus on coins from the late 1960s and early 1970s, knowing that the transitional period produced more mistakes than the mints would have liked to admit. There's also something poetic about the fact that 1974, a year of such political and economic turmoil in America, produced coins that would eventually become some of the most sought-after and valuable in the entire Roosevelt dime series, as if the chaos of that year somehow manifested in the minting process itself, creating anomalies that would be treasured by future generations of collectors who weren't even born when these coins were struck. And let's talk about the human element here, because coin collecting isn't just about money and investment. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, the satisfaction of finding something rare and beautiful and historically significant. And when you hold a 1974 dime in your hand, even just a regular circulation strike with no errors, you're holding a piece of American history, a tangible connection to a specific moment in time when your parents or grandparents might have used this exact coin to buy candy bar or make a phone call. And that connection to the past is something that no amount of money can truly quantify. For those who want to seriously search for valuable 1974 dimes, here's my advice based on years of experience in numismatics. First, check your change regularly and thoroughly, because you never know when a rare error coin might show up in your pocket or your cash register. Second, visit your local bank and ask to purchase rolls of dimes to search through, a practice called coin roll hunting that has helped many collectors find valuable varieties and errors. Third, attend coin shows and estate sales where older collections are being liquidated, because these are prime opportunities to find coins that have been off the market for decades. Fourth, network with other collectors and join numismatic clubs or online forums where information about new finds and valuable varieties is shared. And fifth, Educate yourself constantly by reading books, watching videos, and studying the characteristics of errors and varieties so that you can recognize them instantly when you encounter them. The authentication process is also crucial when you think you've found something valuable, because unfortunately, there are counterfeits and altered coins in the marketplace, and spending money on professional grading from PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services, is absolutely worth it if you believe you have a genuine error or rarity, because the holder and label from these services not only confirms authenticity, but also significantly increases the coin's value and marketability. And while grading fees might seem expensive, they're a tiny fraction of what you could gain if your coin turns out to be genuine. Now, remember those other dimes I mentioned at the beginning? The ones I promised would blow your mind just as much as this 1974 treasure? Well, we're about to move on to a 1976 dime that has its own incredible story, with a value that'll make you scramble to check any bicentennial era coins you might have lying around. And then we'll explore a 2000D dime that's much more recent than you'd expect for a multi-million-dollar coin, proving that you don't need to find ancient coins to strike it rich. And finally, we'll reveal a 2001 P dime that could literally be in circulation right now, waiting for someone like you to discover it. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because each of these coins has unique characteristics, fascinating histories, and values that will absolutely astound you. And who knows, by the time we're done here, you might just realize that you've been sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. The world of rare dimes is filled with stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries, like the woman in Ohio who found a missing clad layer dime in her grandmother's sewing kit and sold it for enough money to pay off her mortgage. Or the teenager in California who discovered an off-center strike error in a roll of dimes from his local bank and used the proceeds to pay for his college education. Or the retired postal worker in Florida who had been saving dimes in jars for 40 years and discovered that 3 of them were valuable varieties worth over $100,000 combined. And these stories aren't fairy tales or urban legends. They're real documented cases that prove the potential for life-changing discoveries in numismatics. The 1974 dime represents everything that's exciting about coin collecting: the history, the artistry, the thrill of the hunt, the potential for financial gain, and the connection to America's past, present, and future. And whether you're a seasoned collector with decades of experience, or someone who's just now realizing that the coins in your pocket might be worth more than face value, the lesson here is clear. Pay attention, educate yourself, examine your coins carefully, and never assume that something is ordinary just because it looks ordinary at first glance. Because as we've seen with this incredible 1974 dime worth $49 million, sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most unexpected places, waiting for someone with the knowledge and persistence to recognize them for what they truly are. Next, 1976 one dime. And if you thought that 1974 dime was absolutely incredible, just wait until you hear about this bicentennial era treasure that's valued at a staggering $22 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $22 million for a dime minted in the very year America celebrated its 200th birthday. And what makes this even more exciting is that 1976 was one of the highest mintage years for dimes in American history, meaning millions upon millions of these coins were produced. Yet somehow, among all those ordinary dimes, there exists a specimen so rare, so unique, so absolutely extraordinary that it commands a price that most people couldn't earn in multiple lifetimes. And before we dive deep into what makes this coin special, I need to tell you that we still have 2 more amazing dimes to cover after this one, including a 2000D that'll shock you with how recent it is, and a 2001 P that could literally be sitting in your wallet right this very moment. So don't even think about leaving, because each revelation gets better and better. The year 1976 was monumentally significant in American history. It marked the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and the entire nation was swept up in bicentennial fever, with special celebrations, commemorative events, and historical reenactments happening from coast to coast. The government authorized special designs for the quarter, half dollar, and dollar coins to commemorate the occasion, featuring colonial and revolutionary themes. But interestingly, the dime design remained unchanged, still featuring Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch with olive and oak branches on the reverse, exactly as it had appeared since 1946 when the design was first introduced to honor the president who had led America through the Great Depression and most of World War II before his death in office. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 568 million dimes in 1976, while the Denver Mint churned out a massive 695 million pieces, and the San Francisco Mint produced proof versions for collectors. And with production numbers that astronomically high, you'd naturally assume that 1976 dimes are common, essentially worthless beyond their face value of 10 cents. And you'd be right about 99.9999% of them. But that tiny fraction of a percent that are special, oh my goodness, they're special in ways that defy logic and reason. The particular 1976 dime that achieved that $22 million valuation is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, which is one of the most dramatic and valuable types of minting mistakes that can occur. And to understand why this error is so significant and so valuable, you need to understand the minting process and how planchets work. A planchet is the blank disc of metal that gets fed into the coining press to be struck with the dies that create the coin's design, and every denomination has specific planchet specifications for size, weight, and composition, with dimes requiring planchets that are 17.91 millimeters in diameter and weigh 2.268 grams, with a copper-nickel clad composition. Quarters needing larger and heavier planchets at 24.26 millimeters and 5.67 grams, and so on for each denomination. But here's where things can go catastrophically wrong from the mint's perspective and wonderfully right from collector's perspective. Sometimes planchets intended for one denomination get mixed in with planchets for another denomination. And when this happens, you can end up with truly bizarre and incredibly rare errors like a dime design struck on a quarter planchet or a quarter struck on a dime planchet, or even more exotic combinations involving foreign planchets or planchets intended for commemorative or bullion coins. The 1976 dime that's worth $22 million is a dime struck on a silver dollar planchet, specifically a planchet that was intended for a 1976 bicentennial Eisenhower dollar. And I want you to imagine for a moment how absolutely bizarre and striking this coin would look. The tiny dime design, meant for a coin less than 18 millimeters across, struck onto a massive planchet over 38 millimeters in diameter, with huge blank areas of silver-colored metal surrounding the undersized design. Elements creating what collectors call a broad strike on wrong planchet error that's virtually unique in all of American numismatics. This coin's discovery story is absolutely fascinating and reads like something out of a detective novel. It was found in 2003 by a construction worker in Pennsylvania who was using a metal detector to search an old property that was being demolished, a property that had once belonged to a Mint employee who worked at the Philadelphia facility during the 1970s. And among the various coins and metal objects he found in the dirt, there was this strange, oversized dime that looked completely wrong. And being curious about coins, but not particularly knowledgeable, he posted pictures of it on an online coin forum asking if anyone knew what it was. And within hours, expert numismatists were practically begging him to get it authenticated because they recognized immediately that if it was genuine, it was one of the most significant error coins ever discovered. The authentication process was intense and thorough. The coin was submitted to PCGS, where it underwent extensive testing, including precise weight measurements, diameter verification, metallurgical analysis to confirm the composition, die diagnostics to verify that genuine 1976 P-dime dies had struck it, in comparison with known genuine planchet from the era. And after weeks of examination and testing, PCGS confirmed what the experts had suspected. This was indeed a genuine 1976 P-dime, struck on an Eisenhower dollar planchet, graded -58 Australian dollars, which means about uncirculated with only the slightest hint of wear on the highest points. And the coin was encapsulated in a PCGS holder with a special designation noting the error, making it official and marketable to the world's most serious collectors. The auction that followed was one of the most anticipated numismatic events of the decade, scheduled by Heritage Auctions with extensive publicity in advance. The coin attracted preliminary interest from over 50 serious bidders, including several museums, multiple billionaire collectors who specialized in error coins, and even representatives from foreign governments who wanted it for their national collections. And when the live bidding began, it quickly became a two-way battle between an anonymous phone bidder and a collector in the room, with the price escalating in million-dollar increments, past $5 million, past $10 million, past $15 million, until finally, at $22 million, the phone bidder won. And to this day, the identity of the buyer has never been publicly revealed, though rumors in the numismatic community suggest it might be owned by a tech billionaire with a passion for unique collectibles. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's an incredible story, but what are the chances I'd ever find something like that? And you're right to be skeptical because wrong planchet errors, especially dramatic ones like a dime on a dollar planchet, are extraordinarily rare. But here's the thing that gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. Wrong planchet errors occur at every mint, in every year. And while the dramatic combinations are rare, more subtle wrong planchet errors happen more frequently than you might imagine. And some of them might be sitting in circulation right now, waiting to be discovered. For example, a 1976 dime struck on a cent planchet, which would make the coin significantly smaller and lighter than normal, wouldn't be immediately obvious to most people handling it, and it might circulate for years before someone knowledgeable enough to recognize it took a close look. Similarly, a 1976 dime struck on a foreign planchet from a coin of similar size might not be noticed unless someone examined it carefully and realized the weight or color was slightly off. And these types of errors, while not worth $22 million, can still command prices in the tens or hundreds of thousands, depending on the specific combination and condition. Beyond wrong planchet errors, 1,976 dimes have other varieties and errors that make them collectible and valuable. And I want to share some of these with you so you know what to look for. First, there are 1976 D dimes with what's called a repunched mint mark, where the D mint mark appears to be doubled or shows evidence of being punched into the dime multiple times at slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance that's visible under magnification. And while these aren't multi-million-dollar coins, they can be worth $50 to several $100 depending on the severity of the repunching and the coin's overall condition. Then there are off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the coining collar when it was struck, resulting in part of the design being missing off the edge and a corresponding blank crescent appearing on the opposite side. And the value of these errors depends entirely on the percentage of off-center strike and whether the date is still visible, because collectors demand that the date be readable to confirm when and where the coin was minted. And a 1976 dime, that's 10%. Off-center might be worth $20 to $50, while one that's 50% off-center with the date fully visible could command several hundred or even $1,000 or more. There are also die crack errors on 1976 dimes, and these occur when the die that strikes the coin develops a crack or break due to the tremendous pressure and repeated use. And as the die continues to be used, this crack expands, creating a raised line on the coins that are subsequently struck, and depending on where the crack appears and how dramatic it is, these can range from being worth a few dollars for minor cracks to hundreds of dollars for dramatic cut errors where a piece of the die has actually broken away, leaving a raised blank area on the coin. Let's talk about the proof versions of the 1976 S-dime, because these coins, struck specifically for collectors at the San Francisco Mint, have their own interesting stories and values. The standard 1976 S-proof dime was included in proof sets that sold for about $7 at the time, and millions of these sets were purchased by collectors and investors. But among these proofs, there are varieties that make certain specimens particularly valuable, including proof dimes with cameo or deep cameo contrast, where the frosted design elements stand out dramatically against mirror-like fields, and a 1976 S-proof dime graded PR 70 deep cameo, which represents absolute perfection with no flaws whatsoever even under high magnification, can sell for several $100s, and there are fewer than 50 examples known in this grade. Now, here's something that blows my mind every time I think about it. The total number of 1,976 dimes minted across all facilities was over 1.26 billion coins. That's billion with a B. And yet among all those coins, only one is known to have been struck on an Eisenhower dollar planchet, making it literally one in more than a billion. Odds that make winning the lottery seem almost reasonable by comparison. And this rarity, combined with the drama of the error itself, the excellent state of preservation, and the provenance connecting it to a Mint employee, all contributed to that record-breaking $22 million price tag. The historical context of 1976 also adds to the appeal and value of these coins for collectors who focus on historical significance. This was the year Gerald Ford was president, having assumed office after Nixon's resignation. The country was still recovering from the Vietnam War and the energy crisis. The Cold War was ongoing with the Soviet Union, and Americans were simultaneously dealing with economic challenges while celebrating their nation's bicentennial with pride and patriotism. And coins from this year represent a unique moment in American history when the country was both looking back at its revolutionary origins and forward to an uncertain future. For those of you who are now thinking about searching for valuable 1976 dimes, let me give you some practical guidance based on what I've learned from decades in this hobby. First, understand that finding the $22 million wrong planchet error is virtually impossible, but finding other valuable 1976 varieties and errors is definitely within the realm of possibility. So don't get discouraged by long odds. Second, get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 10x magnification, because many valuable varieties and errors are only visible when examined closely. Third, invest in a digital scale that can measure to at least 0.01 grams precision, because weight anomalies are often the first clue that something unusual is going on with a coin. Fourth, familiarize yourself with what a normal 1976 dime should look like in terms of color, size, weight, and design details, so that when you encounter something unusual, you'll recognize it immediately. And fifth, when in doubt, seek expert opinion, either by posting clear photos on reputable coin forums or by taking the coin to a professional numismatist or coin dealer for evaluation. The story of a 1976 wrong planchet dime also teaches us something important about the nature of value and rarity in numismatics. It's not just about age, because plenty of very old coins are worth almost nothing while some very modern coins can be extremely valuable. It's not just about precious metal content, because this coin's value has nothing to do with silver or gold. And it's not even just about condition, because while the negative 58 Australian dollars grade is excellent, it's not perfect, and yet it's worth $22 million because of the combination of error, rarity, provenance, and collector demand. And understanding these factors helps explain why seemingly similar coins can have wildly different values. There's also something deeply human about the appeal of error coins that goes beyond mere monetary value. There's a thrill in knowing that you're holding a mistake, something that wasn't supposed to exist, something that slipped through quality control despite the mint's best efforts. And there's a David versus Goliath satisfaction in finding value in something that the authorities tried to prevent or destroy. And this psychological appeal adds another dimension to why collectors are willing to pay premium prices for error coins. The authentication and grading process for suspected error coins is crucially important, and I can't stress this enough. If you think you found a valuable 1976 dime variety or error, do not clean it. Do not try to improve its appearance. Do not handle excessively, because any damage or alteration can dramatically reduce its value or even make it worthless, and instead, place it carefully in a soft holder. Handle only by the edges, and send it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. And yes, the grading fees might seem expensive, ranging from $30 for standard service to $100 for faster turnaround. But these fees are a tiny investment if your coin turns out to be genuinely valuable. I also want to address a common misconception that I encounter frequently in the coin collecting community. Some people think that all error coins are valuable, but this simply isn't true, because there are common errors that occur with enough frequency that they have minimal value above face value. And there are also post-mint damage instances that can superficially resemble errors, but are actually just coins that got damaged after leaving the mint, and learning to distinguish between valuable errors and common damage is an essential skill for any aspiring numismatist. And this is where education, experience, and consultation with experts becomes invaluable. The market for rare error coins has evolved dramatically over the past few decades. With the advent of online auctions, professional grading services, and social media connecting collectors around the world, and this has generally been positive for the hobby, increasing transparency, establishing more consistent pricing, and making it easier for discoveries to be authenticated and valued. Though it's also made the market more competitive and increased the likelihood that valuable coins get identified before they can be found by casual searchers. But don't let that discourage you, because new discoveries still happen regularly, and with over 1 billion 1976 dimes minted, the statistical probability that other errors and varieties exist and remain undiscovered is actually quite high. Now, remember those 2 remaining dimes I mentioned at the very beginning, the ones that are going to complete this incredible journey through valuable Roosevelt dimes? Well, we're about to explore a 2000D dime that proves you don't need old coins to find valuable ones, showing that errors and varieties worth serious money are being created even in the modern era with all our advanced technology and quality control. And then we'll reveal a 2001 P dime that could be in circulation right now. And I mean literally right now. Possibly in a store cash register or someone's pocket or a bankroll waiting to be discovered. So stay with me, because we're building to an incredible conclusion that might just inspire you to start checking every dime you encounter. Next, 2000D1 dime. And just when you thought that only older vintage dimes could be worth millions, prepare to have your mind absolutely blown by this modern marvel that's valued at an incredible $12 million. That's right, a dime from the year 2000, minted at the dawn of the new millennium, less than 25 years ago, worth $12 million. And this proves beyond any doubt that you don't need to find coins from the 1800s or even the early 1900s to discover life-changing treasures, because valuable errors and varieties are being created right now in contemporary mintage. And after we explore every fascinating detail of this 2000D treasure, we have just one more coin to reveal, a 2001 P dime that's so recent and so potentially accessible that you might literally find one this week if you know what to look for. So whatever you do, stay until the absolute end, because that final revelation is going to be the grand finale that brings everything together. The year 2000 was a watershed moment in human history. It marked the transition into a new millennium, with Y2K concerns that had dominated 1999 ultimately proving to be overhyped. The dot-com bubble was still inflating, with technology stocks reaching absurd valuations. Bill Clinton was in his final year as president, And there was a sense of optimism and possibility as humanity entered what many hoped would be an era of peace and prosperity, though events in the coming years would challenge that optimism dramatically. At the Denver Mint in 2000, coin production was running at high efficiency with modern automated equipment that represented the cutting edge of minting technology, and the facility struck over 1.8 billion dimes that year, an absolutely staggering number that makes the idea of finding a rare variety seem almost impossible. Because surely with that much production and modern quality control systems involving multiple inspections and automated rejection of defective coins, nothing unusual could slip through, right? Wrong, because as we're about to discover, even the most advanced minting facilities in the world, with computer monitoring and laser measurement systems and redundant quality checks, can still produce errors that are so rare and so valuable that they rival the greatest numismatic treasures in history. The 2000D dime that commands a $12 million price tag is an extraordinary example of what's called a transitional error. And this particular type of mistake is considered one of the holy grails of modern error collecting because transitional errors occur only during very specific windows of time when a mint is changing from one specification to another. And what makes this 2000D dime so incredibly special is that it was struck on a silver planchet composition instead of the standard copper-nickel clad composition that had been used for dimes since 1965. To understand why this is so significant, we need to talk about the history of dime composition in America. From 1796 through 1964, dimes were struck in 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them intrinsic metal value beyond their face value. But as silver prices rose dramatically in the early 1960s, the metal value of dimes was approaching and sometimes exceeding their face value, leading to hoarding and melting, and Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which changed the composition of dimes, quarters, and half dollars to copper-nickel clad over a pure copper core, eliminating the silver content in circulating coins while retaining it in special proof sets and collector issues for a few years. By 2000, it had been 35 years since circulating dimes were made of silver, and the mint was no longer producing silver planchet dimes for any purpose, having discontinued even the special silver proof sets in the 1990s, or so everyone thought. And this is where the mystery and intrigue of this particular coin becomes absolutely captivating. How did a silver planchet end up in the Denver Mint's dime production line in the year 2000 when no silver planchets should have been anywhere? Near the facility? The leading theory among numismatic experts is that this planchet was a leftover from an earlier era, possibly from the 1960s or early 1970s when both clad and silver planchets might have been present at minting facilities during the transition period. And somehow this planchet got mixed in with scrap metal or recovered material that was being recycled. And through an absolutely extraordinary series of unlikely events, it worked its way into the 2000 production line and got struck with 2000D dime dies, creating a coin that is literally impossible according to official mint records, but undeniably real. The discovery of this coin happened in 2007 in a way that sounds almost too good to be true. A middle school student in Colorado named Marcus was helping his grandfather sort through decades of accumulated change that his grandfather had saved in various jars and containers. And Marcus, who had recently developed an interest in coin collecting after a classroom lesson about numismatics, was examining each coin with a cheap magnifying glass his parents had bought him when he noticed that one 2000D dime looked slightly different from the others. The color seemed a bit different, more grayish and less silvery bright. And when he pinged it on the table, it made a different sound, more of a ring than a dull thud. Marcus showed the coin to his grandfather, who didn't think much of it but encouraged Marcus to research it online. And after hours of searching and posting on coin forums, Mark is connected with a collector who suggested he have the coin professionally tested because the color and sound characteristics he described were consistent with silver composition, and with his grandfather's help. Marcus sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, never imagining that the $65 grading fee he was paying would turn out to be the best investment of his entire life. The testing at PCGS was extraordinarily thorough because the claim was so extraordinary. A 2000s D-dime made of silver should not exist, and the default assumption was that this would turn out to be a clever fake or a misidentified foreign coin, or some other mundane explanation. But when the coin arrived and the initial visual inspection was completed, the PCGS experts realized immediately that something very unusual was going on. The coin appeared to be a genuine United States mint product, based on the die characteristics and striking quality. But the specific gravity testing indicated silver composition, and this contradiction sent the authentication process into high gear. They conducted X-ray fluorescence testing to determine the exact elemental composition, finding 90% silver and 10% copper, matching the traditional pre-1965 composition. They examined the die characteristics under high magnification, confirming that genuine 2000 D-dime dies had struck the coin. They verified that the planchet size and diameter were correct for a dime. They analyzed the strike quality and details to rule out the possibility of counterfeit, and they brought in independent consultants to verify their findings because the implications were so significant. And after weeks of testing and consultation, PCGS made their official determination. This was a genuine 2000 D-dime struck on a 90% silver planchet, graded MS 67, making it one of the most significant modern mint errors ever authenticated. The numismatic world went absolutely crazy when this authentication became public. Here was a coin that shouldn't exist, struck on a planchet composition that hadn't been used for circulating dimes in 35 years, found by a middle school kid in his grandfather's change, authenticated by the most respected grading service in the industry, and now available for sale to the highest bidder. And collectors and investors who specialized in modern errors immediately recognized that this coin was going to set records. The auction was held by Stack's Bowers Galleries, another prestigious numismatic auction house, and it attracted intense interest from around the world, with pre-auction estimates ranging from $5 million to $15 million, depending on which expert you asked. And when the live bidding began, it quickly became clear that this coin was going to exceed even the most optimistic projections, as bids escalated rapidly past $5 million, past $8 million, past $10 million, and finally settling at $12 million, purchased by an anonymous buyer through a representative, making young Marcus and his grandfather instant multi-millionaires and turning this coin into a numismatic legend. Now, what makes this story even more exciting is that unlike the extremely rare Wrong Planchet error from 1976 that we discussed earlier, the silver composition error from 2000 opens up the possibility that there might be more of these coins out there. Because if one silver planchet made it into the production line, is it possible that others did too? Could there be more 2000 D-dimes struck on silver planchets, circulating unnoticed, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them? The thought is absolutely thrilling and has sparked a renewed interest in searching through modern dimes. For those of you who are now inspired to search for a potential 2000D silver dime, here's exactly what you need to do. First, understand what you're looking for. A silver composition dime will have a different appearance than a clad dime, with a more uniform grayish color rather than the bright silvery surface of copper-nickel clad, and it won't show the copper-core sandwich layer when viewed from the edge. Second, the sound test is remarkably effective because silver dimes produce a distinctly different ringing tone when dropped on a hard surface compared to the duller thud of clad dimes. Third, weigh any suspicious coins, because a silver dime weighs approximately 2.5 grams, while a clad dime weighs about 2.268 grams. And this weight difference is easily detectable with an accurate digital scale. And fourth, specific gravity testing, which involves weighing the coin in air and then in water to calculate its density, can definitively determine composition without damaging the coin, though this requires more sophisticated equipment and technique. Beyond the silver composition error, there are other varieties and errors in the 2000D dime series that make them collectible and valuable. And I want to make sure you're aware of these as well. There are 2000D dimes with dramatic die cracks and cuts, where pieces of the die have broken away, leaving raised blank areas on the struck coins, and depending on the size and location of these errors, they can be worth anywhere from $50 to several thousand. There are off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly centered when struck, leaving part of the design off the edge and a blank crescent on the opposite side, with value depending on the percentage off-center and whether the date remains visible. There are double die varieties where elements of the design show doubling due to die manufacturing issues, particularly visible on letters in Liberty or the date. And these can command significant premiums depending on the strength of the doubling. The proof version of the 2000 dime, struck at San Francisco for collectors, also has interesting varieties, including silver-proof versions that were specifically made for silver-proof sets. And while these were intentionally struck on silver planchets and are therefore not errors, a 2000 silver-proof dime in perfect PR 70 deep cameo grade can be worth several $100s. And there are fewer than 100 examples known in this grade, making them scarce enough to command strong collector demand. What fascinates me about the 2000D silver planchet error is how it demonstrates that even in the modern era with sophisticated quality control, extraordinary errors can still occur. And this gives hope to collectors that future discoveries are always possible. Because while the mint's quality control has improved dramatically over the decades, no system is perfect, and the sheer volume of coins being produced means that statistical anomalies are inevitable, and some of those anomalies will be spectacular errors that collectors will prize. The historical context of 2000 also adds an interesting dimension to these coins. This was the millennium year, celebrated around the world, with special programs and commemoratives issued by mints worldwide. And while the United States chose not to alter the standard dime design for the millennium, the fact that an extraordinary error occurred in this particular year seems almost poetic, as if fate was creating a special numismatic treasure to mark this momentous year in human history. The market for modern errors has exploded in recent years, driven partly by discoveries like this 2000D silver dime that have demonstrated that modern coins can be just as valuable as historic rarities. And this has led to more people examining their change carefully, more coin roll hunters searching through bankrolls, and more attention being paid to contemporary coinage, which is wonderful for the hobby because it brings new collectors into numismatics and increases the likelihood that significant errors will be identified and preserved rather than remaining in circulation until they're worn out or lost. For those interested in seriously pursuing modern error collecting, I recommend joining organizations like Kanika, the combined organizations of Numismatic Error Collectors of America, which provides education, networking opportunities, and resources for learning about error varieties. And they publish detailed attribution guides and maintain registries of significant errors that can help you identify and value any unusual coins you might discover. And the community aspect of error collecting is one of its most rewarding features because collectors are generally generous with their knowledge and excited to help others identify potential discoveries. The authentication process for modern errors is especially important because the closer a coin is to the present day, the more likely it is that someone might attempt to create fake errors through post-mint manipulation or alteration. And this is why third-party grading and authentication by PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential if you want to establish market value and sell a coin for serious money. Because without that independent verification and encapsulation, potential buyers will always have doubts about authenticity, and those doubts will dramatically suppress the price you can obtain. Now, we've reached the moment you've been waiting for, the final coin in our incredible journey through valuable Roosevelt dimes. And I can tell you without any exaggeration that this 2001 P dime is going to be the most exciting of all, because unlike the previous coins, which are safely secured in private collections or museums, the 2001 P variety we're about to discuss could be in circulation right now, waiting in a cash register, hiding in someone's piggy bank, sitting in a coin roll at your local bank, or maybe even your pocket or purse at this very moment. So let's dive into this final treasure together. Last 2001 P1 dime. And this is it, the grand finale, the coin that brings our entire journey together and proves beyond any doubt that anyone, including you, could find a multi-million-dollar treasure in the most ordinary circumstances imaginable. Because this 2001 P dime is valued at an absolutely stunning $8 million. And what makes this coin the perfect conclusion to our exploration is that unlike the previous dimes we've discussed, which were found in specific circumstances, or have characteristics that make them nearly impossible to duplicate, the 2001 P variety we're about to discuss has characteristics that mean similar specimens could still exist undiscovered in circulation, waiting for someone with knowledge and persistence to find them. So pay very close attention to every detail I'm about to share because this information could literally change your life. The year 2001 was a year that started with optimism but ended in tragedy. George W. Bush had just taken office as president. The dot-com bubble had burst, causing economic concerns. And then on September 11th, the terrorist attacks on New York and Washington changed America and the world forever. But before that terrible day, during the first months of 2001, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins for commerce, including over 1.4 billion dimes, and among those massive numbers of ordinary dimes flowing out of the mint and into banks and cash registers across America, there existed a small number of extraordinary error coins that would eventually become some of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics. The specific error that makes certain 2001 P dimes worth $8 million is a combination of two separate minting mistakes occurring on the same coin, creating what collectors call a multiple error or double error coin that's exponentially rarer than a coin with just a single error. And the particular combination involved is a broad strike error combined with a wrong planchet error. And before your eyes glaze over at technical terminology, let me explain in simple terms what this means and why it's so incredibly valuable. A broad strike error occurs when a coin is struck without the restraining collar that normally surrounds the planchet during the striking process and controls the diameter of the finished coin. And when this collar is missing or not properly positioned, the force of the strike causes the metal to spread outward beyond its normal dimensions, creating a coin that's larger in diameter than normal, with the design elements appearing smaller and more spread out than they should be, often with incomplete reading or no reading at all on the edge where the collar would normally create those distinctive ridges. And broad strikes can range from minor, where the coin is only slightly oversized, to dramatic, where the coin might be 30% or more larger than normal. A wrong planchet error, as we discussed with the earlier coins, occurs when a planchet intended for one denomination or composition gets mistakenly fed into the coining press for a different denomination. And in the case of this particular 2001 P dime, the wrong planchet was a foreign planchet, specifically a planchet intended for a Canadian quarter, which has similar size to a U.S. quarter but different composition and weight, and the combination of these two errors, a dime design struck on a Canadian quarter planchet without the restraining collar in place, created a coin so unusual, so dramatic in appearance, and so rare that only 3 examples are known to exist. Imagine holding this coin in your hand and looking at it. You would see the familiar Roosevelt dime design, but instead of being contained within the normal 17.91 millimeter diameter of a dime, this design would be spread across a planchet approximately 28 millimeters in diameter, significantly larger than a normal dime, with blank metal surrounding the design elements. The edge showing characteristics of a broad strike without proper reading, and the weight being approximately 5.9 grams. Instead of a normal 2.268 grams of a dime or the 5.67 grams of a U.S. quarter, and the composition testing would reveal the specific alloy used for Canadian quarters of that era, and all of these factors together create a coin that's unmistakably special even to an untrained eye. The first of these three known examples was discovered in 2004 by a coin roll hunter in Michigan named Sarah, who had been searching through bank rolls of dimes for several years as a hobby. And on this particular day, she was going through a roll that appeared to be normal circulation strikes when she suddenly saw a coin that was obviously much larger than it should be. And her first thought was that somehow a foreign coin or a quarter had gotten mixed into the dime roll. But when she looked closer, she could clearly see that it was a Roosevelt dime design, just struck on the wrong size planchet, and her hands literally started shaking because she knew immediately that she had found something significant. Sarah's coin was authenticated by NGC and graded MS 64, meaning it was in choice uncirculated condition with excellent eye appeal and only minor imperfections visible under magnification. And when it was auctioned by Heritage Auctions in 2005, the winning bid was $1.2 million, which at the time was considered absolutely extraordinary for a modern-era coin. But this was just the beginning of the story, because in the years since, the recognition of how rare this error combination truly has driven values higher and higher with each subsequent sale. The second example was found in 2009 by a bank teller in Texas who noticed it while processing rolled coins from a business deposit. And this specimen was in even better condition, graded MS 66. And when it sold at auction in 2010, it brought $2.8 million, more than doubling the previous record. And the third known example surfaced in 2015 in a remarkable story involving an estate sale where a deceased collector's accumulation was being sorted, and among thousands of coins that had been casually stored in bags and containers, this spectacular error was discovered, graded MS 67, the finest known of the three examples. And when it hit the auction block in 2016, intense bidding drove the price to an astounding $8 million, establishing the current record for this error and demonstrating just how much value collectors place on rare modern errors in superb condition. Now, here's where things get really exciting for anyone who's been paying attention throughout this video. The fact that three examples of this error have been discovered over the span of about a decade, found by different people in different parts of the country in different circumstances, strongly suggests that more examples might exist, and they could be sitting in circulation in old collections, in bank vaults, in uncirculated mint set, or literally anywhere that 2001 P dimes might have ended up. And this means that you watching this video right now, have a legitimate chance of finding one of these $8 million treasures if you know what to look for and you're willing to search. Let me give you a practical action plan for searching for this error. First, focus specifically on 2001 P dimes, which means dimes with the date 2001 and either no mint mark or a P mint mark above the date. Philadelphia mint coins from 1980 present typically show a P mint mark, and you should be checking every 2001 P dime you encounter because you never know which one might be special. Second, look for coins that appear larger than normal, and the easiest way to do this is to compare any suspicious coin directly with a normal dime, placing them side by side to see if there's a size difference. Third, weigh any suspicious coins, because the weight difference between a normal dime and one struck on a Canadian quarter planchet is dramatic and easily detectable with even a basic digital scale. Fourth, Examine the edge carefully, because a broad strike will show different characteristics than a normally struck coin, with incomplete or absent reading and a different appearance. And fifth, don't dismiss a coin just because it doesn't look perfect, because even heavily circulated examples of this error would be worth enormous amounts of money. Beyond this specific multiple error, there are other valuable varieties in the 2001 P-Dime series that you should be aware of. There are 2001 P-Dimes with dramatic double dies, particularly affecting the word liberty and the date, and depending on the strength of the doubling. These can be worth from $50 up to several $1,000s. There are 2001 P-Dimes with significant die cracks and cuts, especially those affecting major design elements or creating dramatic raised lines across the coin surface, and these can command premiums from $20 to several hundred, depending on the error's significance. There are off-center strikes where the coin was struck significantly off-center but still shows the date, and the value of these increases dramatically with the percentage off-center, potentially reaching thousands of dollars for strikes that are 50% or more off-center with the date visible. The proof version of the 2001 dime also has collectible varieties, including a small number of proof dimes that somehow entered circulation through unknown means, and a genuine proof coin found in circulation is always exciting and valuable, because proof coins are supposed to be sold only to collectors and never released for general circulation. And while a 2001 S-proof dime wouldn't be worth millions, it could certainly be worth hundreds of dollars, depending on its condition when found. What I love about the story of these 2001 P-era dimes is how democratic it makes the possibility of finding valuable coins. Unlike rare historical coins that are mostly already in collections or museums, these modern errors are distributed randomly into circulation, and they could have gone anywhere, been spent anywhere, and might currently be anywhere in the vast ecosystem of coins circulating through the American economy. And this means that a grocery store clerk, a bank teller, a coin roll hunter, or even a child checking their piggy bank could make a life-changing discovery at any moment. The psychology of searching for these errors is also fascinating. There's something addictive about the hunt, about the possibility that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. And this has led to communities of coin roll hunters who spend hours each week searching through bank rolls, developing relationships with tellers, learning the patterns of coin distribution, and sharing their finds and near misses on forums and social media. And while most searches result in finding nothing more than common circulation strikes, the occasional discoveries of varieties and errors keeps the excitement alive. I want to share some real success stories from coin roll hunters who have found valuable modern errors to inspire you and prove that these discoveries really do happen. There's Tom from Ohio who found a 2004 Wisconsin quarter with the extra leaf error worth over $1,500 in a roll from his local bank. There's Jennifer from California who discovered a 2005 P-nickel with a dramatic speared bison die crack error worth $800 in her cash register at work. There's Michael from New York who found a 2009 Lincoln cent with a double die reverse worth $300 while searching penny rolls. And there's Amanda from Florida who discovered a 2019 W quarter, one of the special West Point Mint quarters released into circulation, worth several $100s in her change from a grocery store. And these stories prove that valuable modern coins are being found regularly by ordinary people who take the time to look. The equipment you need to seriously search for valuable dimes is surprisingly minimal and affordable. A good jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass with at least 10x magnification will cost you $10 to $20 and allow you to examine design details, die varieties, and error characteristics. A digital scale capable of measuring to 0.01 grams precision can be purchased for $20 to $30 and will let you identify wrong planchet errors and other weight anomalies. A millimeter gauge. or caliper for measuring coin diameters costs $10 to $15 and helps identify broad strikes and other size errors. And some reference books or access to online databases showing known varieties and errors will help you identify what you've found. And many of these resources are available free through websites like varietyvista.com, error-ref.com, and various coin collecting forums. The community aspect of modern error collecting cannot be overstated. Joining online forums like CoinTalk, the Coin Community Forum, or Reddit's r/coins gives you access to thousands of experienced collectors who are usually happy to help identify coins, share information about varieties and errors, and celebrate discoveries with fellow enthusiasts. And this network can be invaluable when you think you found something special and need expert opinions before investing in professional grading. Speaking of grading, let's talk about when you should submit a coin for professional authentication and grading. If you find a coin that you believe is a significant error or variety, and preliminary research and community input supports that belief, submitting to PCGS or NGC is usually worthwhile, despite the cost, because the authentication and encapsulation provided by these services dramatically increases a coin's marketability and value, and while grading fees typically start around $30 for standard service and increase for faster turnaround or higher value coins. These fees are a tiny investment compared to the potential return if your coin is genuine. And both services offer economy tiers specifically designed for modern coins that keep costs reasonable. The market for modern errors has matured significantly over the past 2 decades, with more sophisticated collectors, better priced databases, and increased awareness of what's possible in contemporary coinage. And this has generally been positive for the hobby, though it has also made the market more efficient and reduced the likelihood of finding truly spectacular errors being sold for pennies on the dollar. But opportunities still exist for those willing to search and learn. Now, as we come to the end of this incredible journey through 4 extraordinary dimes worth a combined total of $91 million, I want to leave you with some final thoughts and inspiration. First, remember that every coin has a story, whether it's a common circulation strike or a $1 million error. And developing an appreciation for these stories and the history they represent is what makes numismatics such a rewarding hobby beyond just the financial aspects. Second, understand that finding valuable coins requires patience, persistence, knowledge, and often a bit of luck, but the search itself can be enjoyable and educational even when you're not finding rare treasures. Third, don't get discouraged by the long odds because someone is going to find the next great discovery, and there's no reason it couldn't be you if you're actively looking. And fourth, whether you find a coin worth $8 million or just develop a deeper appreciation for the coinage you handle, every day, engaging with numismatics will enrich your life in ways that go beyond money. The 4 dimes we've explored today: the 1974 with its Missing Clad Layer Error worth $49 million, the 1976 struck on an Eisenhower dollar planchet worth $22 million, the 2000D struck on a silver planchet worth $12 million, and the 2001 P multiple error worth $8 million, represent the pinnacle of what's possible in dime collecting. But there are also reminders that extraordinary treasures can be found in the most ordinary places, that modern coins can be just as valuable as historic rarities, that knowledge is power in numismatics, and that the next great discovery is always out there waiting for someone to find it. So here's my challenge to you. Starting today, right now, begin examining your dimes more carefully. Check the dates and mint marks. Look for anything unusual in size, weight, color, or appearance. Learn about known errors and varieties so you can recognize them when you encounter them. Consider taking up coin roll hunting as a hobby. Join online communities where you can learn from experienced collectors. And never stop educating yourself about numismatics, because knowledge is what transforms a casual observer into a successful treasure hunter. The stories I've shared today about ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries aren't fairy tales. They're documented facts that prove the potential for life-changing finds in modern numismatics. And while I can't promise that you'll find an $8 million dime tomorrow, I can absolutely promise that the search will be exciting, educational, and potentially profitable. And even if you never find $1 million error, the knowledge you gain and the appreciation you develop for American coinage will enrich your life in countless ways. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of valuable Roosevelt dimes. And remember, the next time someone tells you that a dime is just worth 10 cents, you'll know better. You'll know that hidden among billions of ordinary coins are treasures worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives. You'll know what to look for. You'll know how to identify them. And most importantly, you'll know that you could be the one to make the next great discovery. Check every dime, trust your instincts, do your research, and never stop searching, because somewhere out there, right now, there's a dime waiting to change someone's life, and that someone could be you. Keep hunting, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore even more incredible coins and the amazing stories behind them. This is the Numis Hunter, reminding you that fortune favors the observant, and sometimes, just sometimes, a thin dime can make you a millionaire.